I think we should commence now. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's evolving landscape, the digital landscape, and the ever-changing, ever-evolving cyber threats, it takes great pleasure for us at GPCCI, along with TPL Insurance, to offer you this webinar on the latest challenges and solutions securing cyberspace with insurance. I would like to request our President of GPCCI, Mr. Parvez Akhtar, to give a short welcome note now, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished representatives of the business community and valued members, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. On behalf of the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I extend a warm welcome to you all for this timely and crucial webinar titled Latest Challenges and Solutions Securing Cyberspace with Insurance. This webinar is in collaboration with our valued corporate member company, TPL Insurance. This webinar will be delving deep into identifying pressing cyber threats for businesses and explore how insurance solutions can act as a valuable shield against unforeseen attacks. Here, I would share my personal experience that in the West, this has been a very common occurrence, and many businesses have had these attacks, and particularly originating, I don't want to name a country, but from Eastern European side, that's very prevalent. So I hope this webinar will provide insights to protect and secure your cyberspace. I encourage you to actively listen and engage in the Q&A sessions with our esteemed speakers, Mr. Louis Bennett, Vice President Cyber at Marsh Management Services, MENA Limited, and Mr. Ali Hussain Zadi, Chief Operating Officer at TPL Insurance Limited. I thank you all once again for joining us today. I trust this webinar will enrich you with the knowledge and confidence to navigate the digital world with greater security and peace of mind. Now I leave the floor open for our speakers, and once again I welcome all our distinguished guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parvez. I would now request Mr. Ali Hassan Zedi, the Chief Operating Officer of TPL Insurance Limited, to give a short presentation at the beginning of this seminar. Thank you. Ali, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dinesh. I hope everybody can see my screen. Because we are pressed for time and we don't have a lot of, the slot is for 10-15 minutes available for me. So I'll have a very quick, short presentation. If anybody can confirm me if I'm audible clearly and you guys can see the presentation on the screen.
The audio and the visuals are both good. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. So I think we all know and we are already aware of the times that we are living in and how technology, not only in terms of our personal lives, where we see us being impacted and really coming up with new tools to use for our routine chores, from ordering food to getting last mile deliveries, to writing services, to using social media for our different sort of requirements. We are also impacted as professionals by technology, and I think that the pace with which the technology is disrupting our daily lives have increased many times. It's the post-COVID as well. So we see a lot of new disruptions coming in through the IT platforms. The banks are being challenged by digital banks. InsurTech is disrupting the insurance industry. Health tech is transforming into completely different domain now. And so on and so forth. So there are a lot of examples that we see on the corporate side where technology is now overtaking the routine nature of jobs and the routine tasks that we used to do in the last 10 years. But that, of course, changes the dynamics of the risks as well. So now we are not only focused on the financial and sort of risk and the great sort of risk that we used to measure historically. Cyber risk is also becoming a threat for most businesses now. So we'll talk a bit about what cyber risks are and how insurance can help us out in managing cyber risk. So, like I mentioned, of course, this is in cybersecurity detail is something different, which maybe Louis will talk about later on during the webinar. But why the importance of what exactly is the importance of cybersecurity for businesses, and why do we need such cybersecurity? Because as we see that more and more businesses are now using data from the customers. They're storing more and more data from customers within their IT platforms. They are using that customer data to improve on their services. The supply chains are now automated. The businesses are heavily dependent on technology. So as we move toward this digitization and automation, the threat from the cyber threats are getting more and more serious as the time goes. So we need cybersecurity not only for the protection of data, be it from our customers or partners, but for example, our patents are also now under threat. For example, take the example of pharmaceuticals, take the example of FMCGs. So their patents that they have are as important to them as their human capital or the fixed assets. The customer information, the other sort of privacy data that the corporates have. Similarly, the business operations are now heavily dependent on automation. So now technology, even in the manufacturing segment, plays an important part as well. So so for example, in an IT, in a steel industry, now automated ordering systems are working. And if there is any disruption in that process, the business goes down. In case of OMCs, the oil manufacturing companies, the ordering system that they have are all automated, getting orders from various locations across the country. If that system goes down, the deliveries are disrupted. So technology is not only impacting, I mean, like we perceive in terms of financial crime, but also for other routine business operations as well. And then we have certain regulatory compliances as well for which cybersecurity is important. Then building the trust with customers. So I give my example in insurance, we generate leads for, and we generate a lot of customer data, and we have information for our customers like their buying patterns and where they live and what are their ages and what insurance needs do they have. So there's a detailed need analysis for our customers. If that, and we have built that customer base over and information over the years, which is critical not only for our existing business, but for our future plans as well. Now, imagine this customer information which we have gathered over the years by spending hundreds of millions of rupees. If that goes out of our environment into our competition, so not only it breaches the trust that the customers have shown to us, but it's also a valuable information which we have generated over time, and our competition can benefit from it. So those sort of informations, I mean, are at various levels within the organizations are at threat. And when we talk about the threats, there are different sort of threats that generally we see in the market. So malwares, which I mean, these are just examples that I've shared here. That there are certain malwares which can disrupt your businesses. There are ransomwares which can either lock you out of your system, or they get your data and they ask for ransoms, and then there are phishing sort of emails through emails and your apps and third-party applications which can come to your net as well. These are some of the common threats which all the organizations at different industries face, which results in financial losses, not only to the companies because of business, it can be because of the legal liabilities that you have to pay, it can be because of the ransoms that you pay to the hackers, it can be because of the third party services that you take to recover that information, and it also brings in reputational damage. So, for example, we have seen in the past a couple of years that certain banks had their data compromised. There were certain ride-hailing companies who had their mobile apps compromised, and it brings in I mean, it comes up with a reputational damage for those platforms and for those organizations. Similarly, like I mentioned, there are operational disruptions as well. So if you have, so for example, in textile industries where you are exporting your goods to international players, and if your system is down for a couple of weeks because of an attack, and you are unable to process your goods because of those attacks, you can incur certain liabilities because of the delays that occur, or certain other things as well. So there are different consequences which can impact a company because of cyber attacks. Now, how does cyber insurance help in such kind of attacks and in such scenarios? So let me be clear. I think like the comment that we heard initially, that how insurance can basically be a deterrent to such attacks. So unfortunately, cyber insurance is not a deterrent because cybersecurity is a different domain. It comes into play. It's the first wall which a company creates against such incidents. And although our topic includes cybersecurity, but I will stay focused on the cyber insurance part. And so when we talk about cyber, for example, security, we have firewalls that needs to be implemented. We have disaster recovery management services that we should have. So that's a completely different domain, and I think maybe Luis will touch upon those subjects as well. But once those security measures fail, then what happens? Then cyber insurance comes into play. And when the event has happened, then how can insurance companies assist in the financial to mitigate the financial losses which a company can have? So, unfortunately, I think I mean it's still a subject which is developing, and it's still a topic which, especially in Pakistan, we're trying to improve the product offerings to our customers. But generally, what our perception is, and what we are currently offering to the market, that reputational damage is something which insurance may not cover, or generally because it's not a financial loss, although it has consequences in terms of which translates into financial losses. But reputational loss and reputational damage is something which cannot be covered for the company. So there are two main coverages which insurance cover, cyber insurance covers, but for the company itself. So when event happens in case of a cyber extortion, insurance company, based on what terms that you have agreed with the insurance companies, the cyber extortion money is paid by the insurance company. Similarly, there are third-party services which you might have to, or as a company who is subject to such threat, has to incur, and that those costs are also borne by the insurance company. So, for example, if you have to hire a third party to recover the data which have been lost, that's covered by the insurance company. If you have you need a tool which is required to recover that data, that is covered by the insurance company. And similarly, if for example there are certain losses, so for example your system was down for about a week and you incurred certain losses because the system was not available, those losses of business interruption is also covered by cyber insurance. Then that's the coverage for the company itself. But then there are certain third-party liabilities that the company might incur as well. And by third party, we meaning the customers, the partners or vendors of the company, or certain other platforms that are integrated with you and get impacted because of the cyber attack on the subject company. So if there are any such liabilities which incur for third parties, they are mostly covered within the cyber insurance space. It can be because of the loss of the data which you had for your customers or your partners. It can be because of if any other system was impacted because of your system. It can be because of the reputational damage to your customers. So maybe the reputational damage to the company, the subject company that is impacted by a threat, that's not covered. But if any third party is impacted, that is generally covered by the cyber insurance cover. So that's the broad, basically, the parameters which are covered under cyber insurance. Now, what generally is not covered in the cyber insurance? Of course, a pre-existing, which goes like it goes without saying, because that's that's the case for every other insurance policy as well. Also, to improve the overall technological systems or the automation systems or the cyber security platforms of the company. So if you have to implement certain new tools to improve your cyber security, that is not covered by the cyber insurance. But yes, if there are any tools used to recover the historical data, that is covered under your policy. Uh, then, if there are any known vulnerabilities in the system, so for example, you know that your firewall or your antivirus has expired, or there are new patches that needs to be included in the antivirus, and you have not done so. So these kind of failures at the part of the company results in non-payment of your cyber insurance claims, or if a loss occurs for known vulnerabilities, those sort of losses are not covered. And then there are, for example, if there are certain infrastructure related, um, or you can say that non-cyber event attacks which impacts your systems, they are not covered. So, for example, if your ISP is down or the cloud services that you've taken from Amazon is down for some reason, so those are not covered under the cyber insurance policy because that's basically a contractual obligation which your partner has not done for whatever reason, or not maintained for whatever reason. So those sort of losses or those sort of interruptions are not covered under the cyber insurance. Um, I hope I'll take the questions at the end, but people would be interested, especially the corporates who are customers who might be interested in knowing that what are the basically parameters which are considered by the insurance companies when pricing for cyber risk. So of course, the overall security environment, the cyber security environment of the company is very important. So what sort of firewalls that you have, what sort of protocols you have, you use, do you do any penetration testings for your systems? So all, do you have a disaster recovery side, and so, do you take regular backups? What sort of backups that you take? So all that security, cyber security posture that your company have is very important to price the cyber risk. In addition to that, of course, like other products, the company history, if there are any known threats to the company, or there were any attacks on the company, or there were any particular cyber threats to the company, if they are considered for pricing the risk. The policy terms and conditions, what exclusions does the company want, what deductibles does the company want, what sort of coverage do they want. For example, in case of a ransom, do you want a 100 million rupees policy, or a 1 billion rupee policy, or 10 billion rupee policy? So of course, those terms are also important while pricing the cyber insurance risk. Generally, what my experience is, that because it's still I mean, cyber insurance is very early days in Pakistan, and we feel that when we go to the customer to ask questions regarding their cyber security risk posture, we do get some. I mean, we do get answers to what sort of protocols do they have, but in terms of the risk coverages that the company needs, generally companies are very I mean, they are a little unaware or not really educated on what sort of coverages do they want. So, for example, nobody knows that what is the exact value of their customer data, or in case of a cyber threat, what sort of ransom would they demand, or in case of an attack, what sort of arrangement would they need to do to recover those the data or bring the systems to work. So those sort of informations are generally not available because that's something which is, I mean, you don't know it in advance, right? So that's still a challenge that most companies face, and as I think the industry, the insurance industry works more on the cyber insurance product, and as the companies start to look and do some R&D for the sort of data they have and the value of that data. These things will gradually improve over time. I think there are some insurance companies that are offering cyber insurance, and mostly the coverages are similar. TPL Insurance is of course one of them, and there are other insurance companies offering this product as well. But this is something which is not mandated by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan at the moment, but it's as a good practice. It's recommended by the regulator to get cyber insurance going forward, and we anticipate and we expect that maybe in the years to come, this will gradually become a mandatory requirement for the corporates, especially in the regulated sort of industries like AMCs and insurance and banks, the digital banks that we now see popping up in the country. So this is it from my side on the cyber insurance side. If there are any questions, we can take them now, or maybe we can wait till the end for
We will be taking the questions towards the end. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to go back to the main agenda for today's webinar, which is the latest trends which are in the cyber world, how they evolve continuously. And whatever you may do, you may have the best hardware, you may have the best antivirus software, you may have the best, what's called IT team looking after you. But at the end of the day, you have to cover your back. Now, what are the latest risks? And for that, we are honored to have and the latest trends and how do we increase our cyber resilience. We are honored to have Mr. Lewis Bennett, who is the Vice President of Cyber Marsh Management Services, MENA Limited. Lewis, thank you for taking the time out and to help us and all in Pakistan with your views and with your suggestions. Lewis, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Dinesh. Hello, everybody. I will just share my screen now and let me know when everybody can see.
Yes, Lewis, we can see you and hear you clearly.
Great. One moment, actually. Sorry, I think I need to just... Oh, sorry. One moment, guys. I just need to amend the... I just need to resize my PowerPoint as I'm sitting on my laptop at the minute. 2 moments. Slideshow. Excellent. Is that working now?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you for everyone for taking the time today. So yes, as Dinesh mentioned, is cybersecurity the latest trends and how do we increase cyber resilience as organizations? So just to take you briefly through the agenda, which we put together prior to this. So we'll have 6 sort of key areas to focus on. I won't I won't read everything off all of the slides, just in the interest of time. But I think we're happy to share these after the call as well, just for anyone who's interested. So the first one being the risks to individuals. The second one, an overview of artificial intelligence and the potential for error. The third one being how employees can compromise an organization. Primary attacks which we have seen as Marshall McLennan on organizations. key cybersecurity controls for organizations, and then an overview of cyber insurance, which can complement your cybersecurity posture. So the latest trends and threats through individual use of phones and tablets. So this slide here focuses on sort of three main risks to an individual, both at your corporate level and in your personal life as well. So obviously now, with the interconnected nature of the modern world, devices which we hold in our pockets are connected to the internet and the wider world. Care should be taken when utilizing your device. Now, this is to say, for example, when connecting to public networks, you need to ensure that you're not sharing your information. When going about and clicking on phishing emails, for example, there's a lot of people, bad actors at the moment, trying to send phishing emails, trying to get access to your accounts, trying to get your passwords, and they could compromise your personal data, resulting in fraud or any number of bad things happening. So the main defense against this is to be aware of what you are clicking on, read the links, read who you got the email from, and just exercise caution at all times. Password security as well. So we at Marsh would always recommend to utilize strong passwords and maintain different passwords for all of your important accounts. Do not use the same password on all of your critical stuff, like if you have two banks, for example. Don't use the same password for both of them. Don't use the same codes that you would use for that and other stuff. And use a mixture of capital letters, characters, and numbers just to make it as safe as it can be for you. The next is an overview of artificial intelligence and the potential for error. So this slide, I just want to give you a quick overview of what artificial intelligence is. Now, a bit of a buzzword at the moment, a very, very key topic, an emerging technology which we are seeing. A lot of interest is into this and for the potential of AI, for what AI can do for mankind, and also the risks as well. I'm sure we've all seen Terminator, so we don't want to spend too much time on that. But just to give you an overview, there are two general types of AI. So narrow AI. So this is an AI system that can perform specific tasks in a limited domain. For example, facial recognition, chatbots, self-driving cars, etc. Then we have general AI. So this is an AI system that can perform tasks that humans can typically perform across any domain. So if anybody has any sort of experience with WeChat or ChatGPT at the moment, you will note that they are becoming more and more intelligent, for lack of a better word, and they can do everything at much sort of faster rate than humans. So general AI is really where the most exciting developments can be made, in my opinion. So generative AI. This is a slide put together just to kind of give a bit of an overview as well of where we are. So today's generative AI models primarily employ deep learning models, which are complex and nonlinear, representing a marked improvement in the diversity and believability of generated outputs over earlier models. Advanced models such as ChatGPT lack complete explainability. The capabilities cannot always be explained based on inputs and model design, and they develop emergent capabilities, which are capabilities the AI models were not originally intended to develop. So what that means is over time, AI is getting more smarter on its own accord, which is really exciting to see how that will develop in the future. Sometimes generative AI models can hallucinate, so referred to in the media as lies. So this is outputs that are not grounded in inputs or training data. And they typically occur when the AI encounters a scenario outside of the training data, or when the AI tries to infer patterns that do not exist. Users of generative AI models must always fact check in order to determine when a hallucination has occurred. So I don't know if anybody saw, just slightly off topic on the slide lately, but very, very interesting. Google had two AI bots talking to each other, and they had to actually shut it down because the AI stopped listening to the commands and started actually developing their own language where they could talk between them about what was going on, as opposed to listening. So lots of scope for things to go wrong, but also very exciting. So just over these as well, I wanted to just, I won't read through everything on here, but just the potential for human error here, which we were focusing on as sort of individuals as well. So Training data, very large concentrated data sets with text and image. So if you put this into the AI, what could go wrong? Unauthorized access or use or disclosure of confidential information, manipulation of data sets by malicious actors, unauthorized use of copyrighted data or content, or selection of biased, incomplete, or inaccurate false data for modeling training. And then this sort of leads us on to the second part, which would be, could that AI then begin to implement malicious code or select model architectures that provide erroneous outputs? Going forward here to the output section. So this is an inference engine that generates new content based on the trained model. Post-processing techniques to refine the quality and usability of the output content. From a human perspective, the potential for error could be developing or maintaining an inference process that favors specific types of outputs over others, or using post-processing techniques that lead to biased outputs. And again, accessing, using, or disclosing sensitive personal output data. As we go along, other components of generative AI, so infrastructure, so specialized hardware. So within computer systems, we're soon going to have TPUs, GPUs, various components in computers that will be artificial intelligence. So our computer will be able to almost guess what we're going to do before we do it. So the speed at which we can soon, hopefully, be able to complete tasks is going to increase an awful lot. Potential for human error here would be that we rely on third-party providers without sufficiently assessing the counterparty of risk, insufficiently managing or monitoring the relevant processes, negligence in documenting the chain of custody, etc. So whilst AI is moving forward at a rapid pace, we still obviously have to have the human element and human overview of that. So within the operations segment, we have security and privacy measures, evaluation metrics, and the risks from a human error perspective are insufficient security measures in place, again, using erroneous metrics or techniques to assess the model quality, insufficiently monitoring or maintaining the AI system. And then this is similar on the regulations piece on the side as well. The potential for human error being failing to appropriately interpret or comply with emerging, evolving regulations within and across different jurisdictions. So I will move on, and when we have questions at the end, happy to address whatever you may raise. So moving on from AI, this slide focuses on how can employees compromise an organization. So really, there are four main ways that employees can compromise your organization. That being the access to data that employees have. So employees will have access to all of the information contained within your organization on the corporate network during their day-to-day roles. So the main thing that we can do is restrict access to a least privileged basis. So what a least privileged basis means in practice, pardon me, is that that we limit the employees having access to areas of the network which they solely need to perform their day-to-day duties. So, you know, if you have somebody working in accounts, they wouldn't have access to all of the HR files, for example. So we really limit what employees can and cannot see. Thus, in the event of any incident taking place, a bad actor can't blanket access all of the information that an organization has. Employee emails. So employee emails are one of the primary methods that a bad actor could gain access to your system. This is via phishing emails, which we discussed earlier, introducing ransomware via links or anything of the like. So the main thing that we can do here is filter and monitor the emails that come into our environment. There are additional controls that organizations can put in place, such as sandboxing capability, which would allow potentially malicious links and attachments to be opened in a secure environment, separate to the wider corporate network, along with employee awareness training, which is very key as the cyber risk landscape continues to evolve. Access to networks. So employees who have access to your corporate networks, basic controls such as multi-factor authentication and limiting employee access, which we discussed earlier, could be implemented. So for those who aren't aware, multi-factor authentication is essentially a control where Anybody who tries to log onto their laptop or a certain part of the network would have to enter a code sent to their smartphone, for example, be that in the form of an app or an SMS text, or potentially an email. So securing the network in the like, so for example, if an employee lost their laptop on the bus, people can't access their laptop if they don't also have the phone to put the code in. So it just gives an added level of security and really, really beefs up the cybersecurity posture of clients. Remote working also, following the COVID pandemic, remote working poses a new risk to organizations. How do employees connect to the networks? Using corporate laptops and multi-factor authentications in place limits the scope for bad actors to compromise the organization. So if you're a business and you're allowing your employees to access your corporate network solely on their own devices, that then opens up the threat attack surface. Unless, of course, you're using VPNs with multi-factor authentication. But what we've seen a lot, particularly in the region, is people just being able to access on their own laptops. So it's a lot easier for bad actors to then compromise those laptops. Primary attacks against organizations. So ransomware obviously makes the news for topping the cyber list of threats. So ransomware is the top cybersecurity threat, which we have seen from our data, but it is not the only one. So there's multiple different threats or incidents which can take place, which could have a detrimental impact on your business. So most conversations about cyber risk today include a discussion of ransomware. Ransomware as a service, RAAS, is readily available. People can go online. Bad actors can literally go online. There are websites where they can purchase ransomware as a service and try to attack organizations. Survey respondents to the Marsh survey rank ransomware as the top of the cybersecurity risk facing their organization, with 1/3 of respondents saying it's the #1 threat. So if you look to the right-hand side of this page, just sort of glance down. So what we've got here is ransomware attacks being the #1 threat to organizations, employees working from home, so including increased phishing and social engineering attacks taking place, business interruption due to external supplier or partner, privacy breach, loss of theft or personal data, historically been more relevant in Europe or America, but now more and more coming in across the region, particularly in the Gulf, where I primarily work. There's lots of upcoming legislation around privacy legislation. So I imagine that will continue to spread across India, Pakistan, and the wider continent. Denial of service attacks, so restricting network access. So a denial of service attack is when a botnet can actually flood the IP address with connection requests, and then people cannot access or go about their day-to-day role. Loss of non-personal private proprietary information or physical damage. So ransomware, whilst getting all of the headlines, is not the only top cyber threat that organizations face. So what can we do as a business to alleviate and improve our cybersecurity posture? So on the next slide, I've put together the main controls which we at Marsh, working with our clients, encourage them to implement. So in the cyber insurance market at the moment, there is almost like a baseline level of controls which they look for, purely because in today's day and age, we're all aware how interconnected the world is. Everything is reliant on the internet and our computers to do work. So if networks go down, businesses can't operate, and quite quickly there will be a loss of revenue or privacy breach or anything from that comes from that. So the key controls that we see, which can improve the cybersecurity of organizations, are on the right-hand side. So those being multi-factor authentication for remote access and administrative and privileged access. Again, that's just the code on the app, which we discussed, that you can click on, and it just really sort of beefs up the cybersecurity posture by limiting the potential of people getting access to your systems who shouldn't have it. Endpoint detection and response software. So what this does, if you imagine your network, an endpoint detection and response tooling will almost be put a circular motion around the network and monitor the network for any unauthorized access or anybody trying to get access to your network. And many times these toolings can be in automatic block mode as well. So really, really good tool. Secured, encrypted, and tested backups. Obviously, sort of goes without saying, to ensure that your critical data, critical applications, critical servers are all backed up daily. Critical information is encrypted. You test these backups for their integrity and you store them in a secure area of the network. So there's almost no point if you have a backup solution that's on your normal corporate network, because if you suffer a cyber incident and ransomware attackers can encrypt your corporate network, your backup would not be safe if it was on the same network. So best practice for that is to maintain it in a secure environment on the network itself, or preferably offline. Privileged access management, again, this is a tooling which allows you to put all of your user accounts into administrative, elevated access accounts and day-to-day. This just allows the IT team to have real sort of oversight on exactly who has access to what, and be able to take that away and grant it at will. Email filtering and web security, we touched on earlier, the requirement of filtering emails, monitoring emails, seeing what is coming onto the organization's network. Doing filtering prior to them reaching the employees is key, because human error is going to be there. Like, all of us make mistakes, so people will inevitably click on links, so will access sites that they're not supposed to, and that can obviously damage the integrity of your networks. Patch management and vulnerability management, again, another key control. So patch management is essentially for all of the software that you use. There'll be regular patches coming up, but what we've seen over the past couple of years in the cybersecurity landscape is zero-day vulnerabilities. So that is in major pieces of software which have been used. So, for example, Microsoft Outlook 365, that was hit. Bad actors became aware of it on day one, so we call that a 0-day, and they were able to exploit that vulnerability and get access to company systems. Incident response planning, so ensure that as a business that you are aware of what you would do in the event of an incident. How many, do you have defined roles? Do you have secondary systems you can back up to? Do you have security operations centers who can manage any incident that takes place? Are you ready for your networks to go down or be hit by ransomware, essentially? Again, awareness training and phishing testing for employees, hardening techniques, including remote desktop protocols. So that sort of touches on what we discussed earlier about employees having access from home. So just ensuring that if they are on their own computers, that they're losing VPNs or RDPs, etc., requiring MFA. And then the bottom three, logging and monitoring network protections. So all of the sort of systems like EDR, email filtering. Best practice would be to have a dedicated security operations center who would review all of the logs from these pieces of software to be able to monitor that and be able to respond to anything which needs responding to. End-of-life systems, obviously end-of-life systems are more vulnerable to attackers, that being because they're not supported by the patching software anymore, or because they're just a lot older and the technology used on them is more vulnerable and easier to exploit. And vendor and digital supply chain risk management. So you want to ensure that the companies that you allow access to your systems are complying with a minimum set of cybersecurity standards which you yourself as an organization would expect. So you don't want, it would be no good to have all of these tools in place. Your cybersecurity posture is great, and then you just allow anybody to connect to your networks when they're a third party. So good oversight of that is key as well. So the final part on this, and not to touch on it too much, as I know that my colleague who presented earlier did so as well. So insurance, complement your cybersecurity posture. So this slide here gives us a bit of an overview of what a cyber event a cyber event could happen, what the impact of that could be, and what the consequence of a cyber event could be. So a malicious attack by a bad actor or an accidental event by a member of your staff could result in non-physical and physical damage taking place to the organization. So for the purpose of time and for this webinar, we will focus on the non-physical side because physical damage is more of a separate product. So for us on the non-physical side, we'd be looking at the availability of your systems, the integrity of your systems, and confidentiality relating to data. So this could lead to a loss of income, first-party costs, third-party liability, fines and penalties, extortion demands for money, and shareholder litigation, etc. So as we sort of go on through here as well, this gives us an overview on the benefits of cyber insurance and what cyber insurance can do for your organization. So if you look to the left-hand side of the slide, let's say, for example, there is a malicious IT event or an accidental IT event. Cyber insurance gives, if you purchase a cyber insurance policy from a really good carrier, then you would be given a 24-hour hotline for assistance services for people that you can contact in the event of a cyber incident taking place. This is part of the policy. These people would work with your dedicated IT team. They would be able to get your systems back up and running as soon as possible to ensure that the risk is mitigated, the loss is as least as it can be, and the business can continue to function as normal. So the main first-party costs could be a loss of turnover. So within a cyber insurance policy for business interruption, you would be remunerated by the insurers up to a level that you would have been at revenue-wise had the cyber incident not taken place. And then privacy liability as well. We touched on that earlier, definitely coming in across the region. More and more countries all picking this up now going forward. And ultimately, that means that businesses are liable for the data that they hold and could be targeted with lawsuits or fines as a result of any breach. This slide here, I won't read everything again, but this just goes into a bit of detail around the first-party costs and the third-party liabilities within a cyber insurance policy. So again, business interruption, costs and expenses. So that is legal assistance, PR and monitoring, identity and access, so mitigation techniques. Cyber extortion is a payment that is made to the business if ransomware attackers have encrypted your systems. Of course, that would obviously, be on discussions with insurers and pre-approval, etc. there. PCI penalties or fines from any sort of regulator for any upcoming privacy legislation that's may come in. Third-party liabilities, privacy events, so breach of personal data, multimedia cover, so financial consequences brought to you by a third party in relation to media which you would publish, personal data protection and defense costs and penalties arising from regulatory investigations. That's just a bit of a summary of what a cyber insurance policy would cover, in addition to all of the incident response coverages which we mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to, whilst I'm on, give you an overview of how it kind of works at Marsh. So we would, if an organization wanted to explore cyber insurance, we would give them access to a client dashboard, which is our cyber self-assessment tool. You would fill in all of the details around your network infrastructure, your cybersecurity posture, what toolings you use, how much data you had, etc., to really give us a holistic view of your network infrastructure and cybersecurity posture when we are discussing with the market about insurance for you. We're then able to produce complementary maturity reports for the organization based on the NIST cybersecurity framework and the BitSight scoring. So we would compare the answers that you've given us to the NIST framework and also provide BitSight reports as well. We can give you key control analysis. So the key controls which I mentioned earlier, we can provide feedback on those and just sort of see where you are at as an organization and sort of really sort of add value to your IT teams and help you on your cyber security maturity journey. And whiz through that in the interest of time and not to make people fall asleep. So if anybody does have any questions, please ask, and I hope you found that informative. And I believe I'll hand that back over to Dinesh.
Thank you very much, Lewis. Thank you very much. It was really, really exhaustive in the sense that it covered all the bases in the modern world. And in fact, it was just one point that I can possibly add on is that with remote working, when we're working from home, one tends to be off guard in the sense that at home, you have an internet provider who's given you a router, which is lying in your house, and you put a password on it. But it seems that these routers are now the point of attack by botnets directly. And that's something that, you always have to be a step ahead. So that makes it more and more acute for a corporate or an organization to cover its back with cyber insurance. And I saw that slide that you made in which you said that an organization has to give you input on all the various network infrastructure. But is there anything in there that would be compromising on their private data? Just a question for you, Lois. Can you expound on that, please?
Not on individuals' private data, no. It would purely just be like quantity of records, etc. But private data may be from an organization in terms of them disclosing what sort of provider that they would use for their EDR solution. Yes, but not anything that would compromise the business, I wouldn't think.
Okay. I would like the audience now to raise their hand for a question. I can already see Mr. Farooq Khan, a guest who's raised his hand. Can my colleague Sania please let Farooq have the floor to say a few words with his question?
Yes, let me just do that.
Hello, thank you so much for opening the phone to me to ask the question. My question is regarding this ransomware coverage under the policy. So, does the policy coverage allow the ransomware to be paid in any monetary terms or in terms of this normal the cryptocurrency which is currently being transacted in terms of this ransom demand, and how what are the legal grounds for the payment if we are to pay any amount in terms of cryptocurrency to someone who may use it for any further illegal purposes?
Yeah, very fair question. So yes, ransomware payments are included in the policy. They're under the cyber extortion element of cover. What would have to happen is once the incident took place, you'd inform the insurers, you discussed with the IT teams, etc. It would then be sort of agreed upon between the client and the insurer what the best way forward would be. So yeah, no, short answer, they are covered. Long answer, I don't think you would be liable for any further implications of how that money was used. But yes, ransomware payments are covered. You would just obviously have to clear that with insurers and discuss that with them at the time of any incident.
Thank you, Louis. Gentlemen of the audience, ladies, any questions, please raise your hand so that we can identify you and give you the opportunity to ask a question. Thank you. Okay. There is a question I can see in the chat. Mr. Sayed Abbas says, is there any loss adjuster available in the market to assess the loss?
Yeah, in the event of a cyber incident and a cyber claim being put forward, you would have independent third-party loss adjusters who would be involved. So it wouldn't be anybody acting in the interest of the insurers. It would be people reviewing the legal documents, reviewing what happened, and yes, loss adjusters would be available and part of the policy.
We have another question. The person's asking, the two questions actually. The first question is, does insurance underwriters or the insurance company provide potential risk assessment services?
Risk.
And the second
Sorry.
question is, which companies are under regulatory compliance to maintain cyber risk insurance?
Risk assessment services in regards to seeing, like, you know, where the organization may be lacking in cybersecurity controls. Do you mean?
In the chat, I wish this gentleman would raise their hand so that they can ask you more.
I think that's Saad Hassani. I believe so regarding the risk management, potential risk assessment. So I think that's a separate domain. There are companies, there are firms that provide that information. They do pen testing for you. They do give audit reports for your cybersecurity as well. But that's generally consumed by cyber insurance or underwriters. Those reports. But I mean, if there is an organization, a big organization, we as insurance companies might require some third party to do that risk assessment. But generally, it's not part of the cyber insurance coverage itself. And I think in Pakistan, if you talk about specifically, there is no mandatory requirement as of now, I believe. Yes, SECP has floated certain regulations that encourages listed companies and financial institutions to get cyber insurance in Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Ali, for diving in with the answers. There are a flood of questions now coming in. One is an interesting one. Is social engineering fraud covered under the policy? I'll repeat, is social engineering fraud covered under the policy?
No. So in the insurance world, the social engineering fraud would be part of a separate insurance policy, which would be crime. It used to be filled on it used to be in cyber incidents back in like a long time ago when I first started working in the line of business. But no, as things stand, social engineering is under a crime policy.
There are two other questions which I think whoever has typed out these questions, if they email us, we could forward them to you, because these are very, very, very wide in their scope. One is what is the costs? What are the costs that are covered in the event of a cyber incident? And what are the policy limits and deductibles? And how is the monetary assessment of reputational loss being done post-loss? And what are the exclusions? So, you know, these are all policy details which can be attacked, I think, in a separate email, or would you like to expound on it at this stage very briefly?
So I think there are a few people who have their mic switched on. If they can put themselves on mute. I think in terms of cost, we have touched upon the topic that there are certain. I'm sorry, somebody muted me as well. So there are certain costs which are covered for the first party, which is the company itself, which includes the restoration cost, data restoration cost, if you need to involve any third party to assist you to get out of that cyber threat or any ransomware, or the ransom itself is payable based on the limits that the company have taken. So these are some of the costs which are covered in the policy, and then there are of course certain third-party legal litigation-related costs as well, which are covered in the cyber insurance. So, so these are some of, I mean, just some examples which I could recall at the moment. In terms of policy limits and deductibles, that's again, it depends on the company, the size of the company, the nature of information that they have, the sort of systems that they're using. So that's that. It varies from customer to customer, industry to industry, size of the company, how monetary assessments of reputational loss being done. So just like I mentioned, that the reputational loss for the company is generally something which is not covered. So for example, if there is XYZ company that is subject to a cyber incident, And if they have their own reputational loss may not be covered, but in an event where their customers or their partners have faced a reputational loss because of being part of the ecosystem in which the cyber incident happened, that is covered, and it depends on contract to contract. So, for example, if there is a bank that has contracted a third party, and there are certain liabilities which they have to pay under that contract, so those sort of liabilities are covered. Are there any exclusions in the coverage? Of course, there are exclusions like every policy. I think we touched upon those exclusions as well, that any pre-existing sort of laws are not covered, any incident other than the cyber security threat, like we mentioned malwares and ransomware. If there is any other incident which results in the system being out of order, or if there is any business interruption for something other than cyber risk, those sort of risks are not covered within the policy. And then there can be certain other exclusions as well. So, for example, we can have an exclusion for an inside employee being part of the cyber risk. So, if that, I mean, these sort of things can be excluded within the policy as well.
That is a very interesting question. Louis, maybe with your experience, you can shed some light on this. A gentleman has written, does the global industry have a claim scenario where ransom payment has been made to a sanctioned country? In today's global world, I think this is quite a salient, question, because most of the attacks will probably originate from a sanctioned country.
I don't. I mean, in my experience, no. Maybe Ali can see something else, but no, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, insurance companies would have to comply with all international sanctions. So, yeah, wouldn't be able to get around sanctions. I don't think.
So I think the question is that if I mean, the payments have to be made in the sanctioned countries. I think, in my understanding, it's covered. So, but that's something that we can come back with as well later on. But in my understanding, if because most of these ransomware payments originates out of sanctioned countries, so that's part of the cyber risk coverage. That's my understanding.
There's another question. If the system is unavailable due to DDoS and the company sustains losses of revenue, does the policy cover compensation? I think this is under business risk. Am I right? It's covered with business interruption. Am I right, gentlemen?
Yeah, that would be covered under business interruption. Yeah, that's one of the standard covers.
I think so. It's DDoS is denial of service attack, right? So that might be covered under cyber insurance if that's a denial of service attack, like we have in malware through web malwares, and if there's any business interruption through this, malware attacks. So that's generally covered under the policy. If that's a denial of service attack,
There's another interesting question. And if any funds are stolen from an account held by the company due to the cyber attack, would that sum stolen be covered under the coverage? Good question.
I think there is an answer on that as well, that is covered under the electronic computer crime policy. But generally, it can be an overrider to the cyber insurance, but not part of the core cyber insurance coverage.
I think, it would be best if we request the members who are in this, what's it called, webinar, who have attended, the guests. Thank you very much for attending. And thank you very much, Louis, for giving your precious time. And I would like to hand over to TPL and Farah to give her thank you address. Farah, the floor is yours.
Hi, Farah. Can you unmute yourself? I think there might be some problem at Farah's end. I would like to thank everybody on the call for joining us today. I hope it was useful. Special thank to Louis for taking out time for this important discussion today. I hope you have all learned a bit about cyber insurance and cyber risk. You're better aware now. Thank you so much. If there are any queries which anybody wants to direct towards myself or Louis or our team, please feel free to write. Thank you once again. And thank you, Dinesh, for the session.